Good evening, Sebin. How are you doing? How are you all doing today?
Good evening, wonderful.
That's good to know.
Sorry,
So that's good to know. That's good to know that you're all doing good. Uh, could you please let me know if the screen is visible?
yes,
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ah, ഞങ്ങളൊന്ന് മാനേജ് ചെയ്യാൻ എടുക്കുന്നു ഞാൻ പെട്ടെന്ന് വരും ആ
Okay. I think we're good to begin. A very good evening to you all. I hope you're all having a good day today. And thank you so much for joining in today to learn about something very interesting, and that is the idea of learning style. Before we begin the session, I would just request you all to please stay on mute until and unless you'd like to contribute to something. Uh, and yes, okay, so let's just begin with what we want to talk about. Learning styles is a very interesting concept that has come up recently where we try to focus on the uniqueness of each child or each individual's ability to grasp a certain kind of stimuli. I think before we go ahead, let me just quickly introduce myself. Hi, I'm Yashi, and I'm a counseling psychologist. So, with that out of the way, let's just understand what learning styles are. So it simply refers to a preference to a certain form of stimuli when learning. In the sense that all of us have a certain preference to information being presented to us in a certain manner that makes it much easier for us to grasp it. It makes it much easier for us to retain that information. Um, if I was to give an example, let's consider a phone number, right? I think all of us have very different ways of preferring to have like a phone number. Some of us are very quick to understand when it's told to us verbally. For some of us, it's much easier to have it written down and given to us as a slip. Sometimes it's much easier for us to sort of write it down by ourselves to memorize the number better. I think that in itself is a very simple example of how all of us have different preferences to the same thing being presented to us. That is what makes us unique in this experience. So today we are going to be learning about these 4 different types of learning styles. To quickly name them, we have the auditory, visual, reading, writing, and kinesthetic learning styles. So I think let's just begin with breaking down each style. Before we go to that, I would like to ask a few questions here. You can, give a thumbs up or say yes if you relate to this happening with your child. So, does your child understand ways and rules better when they are narrated? Does your child pick up verbal instructions faster than any other form of instruction? Do they love explaining things to people? Do they like talking and looking sideways when they're trying to recall something? Do any of you notice or observe this is something that your child does? Any of these, he has a preference to do these things. Right. Okay. So we have a few relating to that. Okay. There's specific ones that we relate to. Right. That's great. Okay. So what we're talking about here, this is the auditory learning style. So if your child does find these, if you do find these relatable for your child, do you see that these are things that your child does, then it is possible that one of their preferences of learning is the auditory style. Now, this means that they learn the best when they are reading aloud or when they're listening to lectures, taking part in discussions, or when there is an instrumental music in the background. I think the simple concentration or focus point here is the fact that your child learns much faster when there is auditory voice involved in what is happening. When they're able to hear what is happening, it makes it easier for them to learn things and retain. Yeah, sure, Afin. Here's the previous slide, right? So I think, again, I think today's main key point here is going to be all of us as parents taking a little time to observe our child and think about our child and see what they, how they behave. Right, when they're interested in listen, they listen in any way. Fair enough, right? But then there are certain things where you notice that your child really likes to read aloud when they're practicing spellings or when they're practicing the tables. So these basic examples show that your child enjoys auditory stimuli more. That is when they're able to hear and when they're able to speak about things. So in that case, what can help them? What can help them learn better? First is lecture recording and tapes. When they have recordings or when they are able to constantly hear what is being talked about, it really helps them. Also, when they're able to engage in discussions. And then, if it's okay, can we come back to the doubts later on at the end of the session? Right. Okay. So they really enjoy engaging in discussions. They like auditory repetition. They explain to themselves loudly, or it helps to watch out for videos where verbal explanations are given. The whole idea here is they're able to grasp information better when there's something they're also able to hear, right? like in the previous slide, it was mentioned that sometimes just having some light music helps because they're stimulated auditorily. They're able to hear a little something in the background, and that helps them focus better. So that is the auditory learning style here, where the child is able to enjoy auditory stimuli, things that they're able to say out loud and hear, and that make the learning process a lot easier for them. The next style for these, again, I would like you all to take like a minute to reflect. If your child um, understands better through diagrams, if they have the need to see something to understand it better, or if they think predominantly in pictures or images, or you notice that they look upwards when they're trying to remember or trying to recall something that they want to share. Do you find your child uh, engaging any of these? Yes, images definitely do help a good deal to recall. Right, Nipa? And I think this is an indicator of this kind of learning style being your preference as well. So, right. Okay, so you do observe your child finding this kind of stimuli easier to relate to. So this is the visual learning style, where you notice that your child is able to learn better when visual stimuli is given, right? They understand the best when there are things that are attractive and they're explained in demonstrations, or they're making notes, and there's a lot of things that are happening in their visual field of view that really helps them understand things better. What would help a child in such a case? Having pictures, illustrations, mind maps, graphics, diagrams, and presentations like these, it really helps grasp the attention of the child, because information. Could I please request you to put yourself on mute, please? Okay. So when the child has something visual to grasp through, when it's presented in concise words, just the keywords put on in front of them, um, in a way that they can see and grasp them, it becomes really easy for your child to learn through that process, right? So this is the visual learning style. Sometimes, in fact, videos and movies also help. You would notice that your child is sometimes able to explain things scene by scene. Even when they're narrating their own school story or something, they break it down scene by scene. They're able to tell who was standing where and what was happening. All of these show that they are a very visual learner, and they are able to grasp the visuals better than things like listening or saying things. Um, Flowcharts and printouts also help, provided information is concise, it's put short, and it's put in a more attractive manner with images and diagrams, because those help the child understand things better. They sort of click a picture of it in their mind, and that is what comes back to them when they're trying to recollect things, right? Um, then we come to the next learning style. And again, I have a couple of questions for you all. Does your child spend a lot of time reading? Does your child like taking notes and pointers? Do they spend time reading materials, a lot of material? Do they like writing down to remember things? Do you notice your child doing these, that there's a lot of reading and writing involved? They're constantly reading material, they're constantly writing notes. You tell them something and they're just like, I will practice it by writing repeatedly and I know I'll remember it. So do you find your child doing these things? Right. So for those of you who do observe this, um, it means that your child has a preference for reading, writing learner. So they like to they really like to learn by reading and writing. So if they're able to find material where things are there's a lot of explanation given that they can read through. Things are broken down in detail for them. That really helps them. As they're reading that, it really becomes more clearer in their mind. Sometimes you see a child writing down pointers, scribbling through their notes as they are reading something, because when they're writing it down, it's almost like they're printing it in their mind. It's being written in their mind as well. So that is a preference of reading writing. And what helps a child who has this preference? It really helps for them to take running notes. You can encourage your child to take running notes. Reading through different materials, if the same topic is explained in 3 different ways to them, it really helps them to correlate all of this information, because the more is given, the more they're able to understand from different perspectives, right? Using annotations also helps the child, making colorful notes, and it's attractive color pens and drawings and things that are attractive to the eye, easier to read, and more colorful, more attention retaining. It becomes helpful for them to read and also write in that process. Writing keywords while reading, mixing both of them, doing reading as well as writing really helps them. For example, this is my predominant learning style. I do a lot of reading. That's how I learn. So more than taking notes, more than the writing part, I relate a lot to the reading part. I constantly am just going through material, and that's what helps me understand things, right? So just like a child, you would also have preferences, and it really helps to know what attracts your attention the most, because then you're able to go back to those learning styles. I know if there's something that I need to prepare myself for, I know reading will help. So I gather that material and I take a while to read through different kinds of things to see what I understand. Sometimes I also make pointers on my phone or on the book where I just write the key points, right? So these are small things that you can adopt into your child's learning routine to help them know what learning style they like and they prefer, and then be able to learn more easily because of that. Now, the last learning style, I would like to see how many of you all relate to this. Does your child like to do things rather than see or hear about them? Are they always looking for some physical activity? You see your child is restless. I think there was someone who asked, what if their child is constantly playing with their fingers or fidgeting while they're reading or studying or learning something? Does your child knowing about how things work? What is the practical aspect of things? How is this happening? How does the gas work? How does this work? Do you see that your child likes exploring things through different activities and options? It's always, I want to try it. I want to do that. I want to see how that happens, right? So if you see those kind of behaviors in your child, it is possible that the learning style of your child is kinesthetic. Okay, I see there are a few parents who relate to this quite strongly. So that means your child is a kinesthetic learner. What this means is they really like to take a hands-on approach, right? They want to tackle things head on and enjoy having demonstrations and a practical experience and explanation. Instead of giving them a whole theoretical breakdown of how things happen, they would love to rather go and see how it works. They would love to go and try it themselves. They would love to see a model of how it works. They would love to understand through examples. So this is the preferences of a kinesthetic learner. And these are some things that can help. Attending workshops and simulations really help for specific topics. If there are certain workshops that explain how things happen, that can really help your child. Laboratories and practical explanations really amaze the child. You see that your child really every day during the summer holidays wants to go and try something in the kitchen, gather things up and make something out of it to understand how it works. All of these show that there is an inclination for kinesthetic learning. It also helps to make models in 3Ds, help the child sit on the laptop and sort of put the pieces together, see if there's like a puzzle sort of thing that they can try to understand with. Engaging in activities related to the concept and learning through examples. These really help the child to learn faster because they like doing things. They are very kinesthetic in nature. In fact, these children sometimes learn better when, if even if the material is not given in a kinesthetic form, even if they have to read through it or listen to someone say something, they enjoy it better when they're doing something. Again, the finger fidgeting, they like because their fingers are engaged, because they're doing something, it's easier for them to pay attention and to concentrate. Um, Similarly, in auditory learning, when their ears are occupied, there is some music, some light background music going on, it becomes easier for them to concentrate because they're engaged. They're engaged in the kind of, in a way that they like. They know that they're occupied in some way, right? So it really helps to keep your child engaged in doing something, and then explain if it is not always possible to go with a very practical approach to certain topics. Now, a very important question. I think this is one of the most important slides to today's presentation, and that is that learning styles are not rigid declarations, but very flexible ranked preferences. It is not necessary for your child to just stick to one learning style throughout their life. It's always a rank. It's never just one preference and only that. It's a rank. I prefer reading the most, then comes writing, and then comes auditory, and then comes visual, and then comes kinesthetic. That is my order, right? So it's very possible for us to have a whole order, a whole ranked order, and not just one and nothing else working. Um, Again, I think someone in the chat box did mention how it's a mix of all of these for the child. Um, and definitely that is because all of them are learning stimuli, right? That at the end of the day, something is presented to the child. So they are able to grasp something. It's just that some children have a more strong preference to a certain stimuli than other kinds of stimuli. So in that sense, it's really important for us to explore and not restrict. You see a child enjoying a certain thing, give a little more of that kind of thing. Like if you see that your child likes visual stimuli more, give them more images, give them more diagrams. In the same time, you can also try to give in a little bit of auditory explanations, or see if they would like to read a little or write a little. See if they would also like to, after they have done going through the diagram, if they would also like to draw the diagram by themselves, right? Do it by themselves. So these are small ways you can mix things together, but also focus on their main learning style and not restrict them to only that one thing. I hope what I said here makes sense, in the sense that we need to explore and let the child have exposure to all of them, but we can give a little more importance to what we see is their dominant learning style as of now. And the basics always stay the same. That is, the child does need to take breaks while studying. They need that time to recover and re-energize themselves. And putting efforts is pervasive. A child who is not interested in studying, or interested in learning at this minute, they want to go out and play. In that minute, even if you give the most favorite kind of stimuli to them, like if the child really likes say putting models together, if they're distracted, or if they're not interested in learning, even that model will not work. They will not be able to learn because there's no interest, there's no effort in it, right? So efforts are pervasive. That is compulsory. The child needs to put their share of effort. It just becomes a little easier if the information is given in the way that they like and prefer more. There's also this idea that your learning style can really help direct your hobbies and your career choices a lot of times, right? For someone who, again, I think because I know myself, I can give that example that I'm a reading, like I said, I'm a reading, writing dominant. That is my dominant style of learning. And I absolutely love to read books. I'm a very big bibliophile, and that is one of my biggest hobbies. I spend a lot of time reading novels and books. Um, my second rank of learning style is auditory. And here's how I also take sessions. I am a counseling psychologist. So I really enjoy talking as well. I really like listening to people and talking to them. So a lot of times you can see how your learning style is also reflected in your hobbies choices and also in your career choices. When I had done my bit of research on this, I found out that, in fact, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the ex-captain of Indian cricket team, had a learning style preference of kinesthetic learning. He liked doing things. That's how he learned better. And that is very clearly reflected in their career choices as well, right? So in that sense, we can also try to relate to that, sometimes use their hobbies as a way to understand their learning style and use their learning style as a way to introduce new hobbies to them, right? Is what I said right now making sense to all of you? Okay, great. Thank you for that. So I think now what we can do is, as we had mentioned, we also have an assessment for you all, a PDF that we're going to be sharing with you all, that you can use and try to administer on your child. You can ask those questions to your child and see what preference, what learning style preference pops up when you take that assessment. So, Shruti, could you please send the link for the questionnaire and the assessment in the chat box?
Yeah, sure.
Again, I'd request you all to please mute yourselves if that's okay. Right. So, I think Shruti has shared the link, and I would request you all to please open the link and take a minute to go through this. Stick with me for a little while. We'll come back to the question and answers definitely at the end of the session. But I would like to first take a minute to run you all through the questionnaire as well. No, you don't have to do this right now, Afreen. I'm just going to explain a little of how to do the assessment so that you can try to do that with your child later on as well, right? If you all could take like a minute to go through that, and then I will also share my screen and we can try to see how it works together.
Yashi, I think it will be delivered to their mail only. They'll get it later only.
Okay.
So, shall I share the screen?
Yeah, Shruti, definitely. I think you can share or I can share the screen. That's okay.
Okay then.
Is my screen visible?
Yeah, Yashi. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is the questionnaire. This is the learning style assessment. And as you can see, there is the name section and the date that you can fill in. Very important point, you can select more than one option, right? There is no need for your child to have only one answer to each question. They can have more than one preference as well. Now, there are different scenarios presented in each question. I think I can take the second one as an example. So you ask the child, you take these, you go with the questionnaire and you ask your child. Now you would think you want to plan a surprise party for a friend. What would you do? And then give them these options. Would you invite your friends and just let it happen? Or would you imagine the party happening? Would you make lists of things to do and what to buy for the party? Or would you talk about it on the phone or message others, right? So there are different options that are given to the child, and the child can select which one they think they will end up doing. They can select more than one as well, right? Now, that's how you go through with all of the questions. We have 12 questions here. And at the end of the day, here, at the end of the page, there is this section where you can calculate what is the highest preference. How do you come to this calculation? If you notice, after each question, after each option, there is a bracket with a letter, right? So the V here stands for visual, the A stands for auditory, the R stands for reading, writing, and the K stands for kinesthetic, right? It's the first letter of the word. Now, as your child gives the options and you tick the ones that they relate with, the ones that they choose, I want you to then take a minute after finishing the questionnaire and then go through all of them and add it all up, right? So you take a minute to see how many V's have the child picked. You add up all the V's and write the number here for visual. Then you do the same for the A, do the same for the R, and the same for the K. And then you can add in the numbers, the scores here, and you will evidently see that there may be a preference for your child. They may score a 4 on the visual, a 2 on the auditory, a 3 on the reading writing, and a 1 on the kinesthetic. So you can see that in that case, their most prominent is reading writing, then comes visual, then comes auditory, and then comes kinesthetic. It's a very clear cut rank that you can see. Sometimes it may also be that your child may score a 3, 4, 4, and 1. And that's really okay, right? I mean, the child can get the same score for more than one option as well. That means that they are really able to enjoy both the learning styles. I think that in fact makes it a lot easy for us because we can combine both the learning styles for the child, right? Um, any any doubts related to the scoring part or how to do the questionnaire? I hope I was clear in explaining it. You go to the child, you ask the questions, give them the options, they tell which ones they would do, which one they would choose. And then you can just mark each letter how many times they have chosen. And then you can get like a final score for it. I'm glad to see that you all like the idea of this. Um, any doubts related to the questionnaire? Uh, I understand, Sidra. It can get a little tricky for a 4-year-old because it's a little, young for them to understand these questions, which is why in that case, what you can also do is, given the understanding that you have of your child, you can try to see what answer would they select. As you observe your child and you see their own preferences, you take a minute to see what your child tries to do more. You can try to answer it from your child's perspective. So, in that sense, the question would change a little like, would my child prefer a teacher who likes to use demonstrations or class discussions or a textbook or an overview diagram? So you try to answer it from the child's perspective. Movina, it isn't a specific age range per se, but yes, like Sidra mentioned, it might be a little difficult for a 4-year-old child to grasp it. So I think for a child who's at least 7 or 8 years, they may be able to understand the questions a little better and answer it themselves. But for the children who are younger than that, and you see that they are not able to understand the questions as well, you can definitely, as a parent, observe the child and think from their perspective and try to answer the questionnaire as well. Apart from that, while the questionnaire definitely exists, I think as parents, we can also take like, as we observe our child and we see their preferences, it sometimes becomes quite evident of what their learning style preferences in terms of their hobbies or what their interests are or how they usually study before the exams. Right before the exams, how do they study the most, what helps them the most? I think when you observe a little about that, see how your child talks, what makes them really excited, all of these things become a signal of what may be the learning style that they enjoy the most. Okay. Any other doubt related to the questionnaire? Okay, I think we're okay as of now. And if there are any questions, we can definitely come back to them. And I'm really glad to hear that, Afreen. I really do hope that this becomes easy. The file has been shared in the chat box. Mubina, is it okay if we come back to your question in a bit as we discuss all the previous questions as well at the end of the session? We can come back to that. Okay, thank you. So I think for a minute now, before we go to the Q&A round, I would really like to ask Shruti to share the screen, right, and talk a little about the upcoming program and offer that Think is giving out, and talk a little about it. So the Parenting Without Frustration is a package that parents can purchase where they have a mix of live sessions as well as pre-recorded videos, along with checklists as well. So the parents are offered live sessions on a monthly basis. They're also given videos pre-recorded, which they can watch at their own pace. They can figure out how they want to watch that. And there are also checklists given on a scheduled time where the parents can directly practice these things with the child. They can directly apply these tips with the child. And the goal here is to start building that bond with your child, create a disciplined environment without making it difficult for both the child and the parent, and for you to begin this process of not only being a parent but also being a friend and guide to your child as they grow up, and provide to them that safe environment, right? It also helps create the right kind of family and home environment, and also equips you with handling the tantrums of your child. So I think this is like a very brief description of all that the course has to offer. It's a 3-month course with so many wonderful things that you can learn. And a lot of Kring parents who've also tried this have loved the course. With the way that it's broken down, it's really quick for you to be able to understand what's being said without a lot of theory, with the right kind of takeaway points, and also very importantly, the right kind of tips for making this possible and practical for you. So this is a little bit of the Parenting Without Frustration program. And the live session for this month is coming up at the end of this month, that is on the 31st of August, if I'm not wrong. So I would really encourage you all to sign up for the course, see what it has to offer, and take it ahead from there. Here is like a breakdown of all that is given in the course, the different kinds of videos and how you approach the entire plan, the entire course and curriculum of the program and the model. And it is conducted by Mariam, our co-founder, a mother of 4, and I think a very talented woman. So that was a little bit of a brief of the Parenting Without Frustration program that's coming up. Any doubts related to that, you can definitely get in touch with Shruti or Shameen at Kring, and they can give you the right kind of information there. And I think, yes, Shruti has also shared the number. Thank you so much, Shruti. And I think, yes, we can go back to the doubts. Thank you all so much for sticking around here. And now we can pick up all the questions and doubts that were there. I'm sorry for maybe making you all hold on to the end of the session. And I'm going to scroll right up and see, how can I correlate this with my baby who's less than 1 year? Hasba, it's a little too early for us to try to see what, apply this to your child, but it's a very good time for you to start observing your baby. Right from now, they will start showing their preferences, and it really helps for you to observe that and pay attention to what preference the child is showing towards. And it becomes, in fact, easier for you to begin the learning journey while also understanding their learning style from the beginning. Okay, so how to teach hyperactive kids? Now, this is a very specific thing in general, Kaushalya, because hyperactivity in itself is a very separate domain, because hyperactivity comes at different ranges. If it is to an extreme that is troublesome for you, that it cannot be toned down, I think it may be an indicator of something else. and it really helps to get the right kind of professional help in that time and see if this hyperactivity is a symptom or an indicator of something else. If it's a very basic level of hyperactivity, I think it comes with the energy that the child has. It may also be an indicator of them being a kinesthetic learner. You can try to explore the different options, see what their preference lies. And even if that does not help them concentrate better, then I think it may be a right time to get in touch with an expert. You can contact Think as well for that. And we can try to understand if this hyperactivity should be addressed in specific. Okay, I'm trying to find the questions. Right. Mubina had asked, how can this help a teacher with her students? As a group, it's a little difficult to identify each child's learning style because they're dealing with a huge number, right? But it definitely does help if the teachers are able to provide the material in different varieties. In the current education system, there's just a lot of teachers either reading out or explaining. So they stick usually to the auditory version. There's sometimes a little bit of reading, writing given, sometimes the presentation is involved. It's not a very balanced mix. And I think that really helps if the teacher is able to find a balanced mix for topics where each child's learning style is touched upon in some way. It helps the child grasp the basic concept. And then once they come back home, they can build on it and perfect it when they use their learning style and practice and work at home. I hope that answered your question, Mubina. Okay. Why a child always plays with fingers very keenly? Again, I think this isn't as straightforward as being related to the learning style. There could be a lot of other things involved. Again, it may show that they're kinesthetic in the sense that they enjoy doing something when they're trying to study or learn. But if you think that this is in general them in their regular behavior, they have a habit of doing that. I think again, it helps to approach an expert and observe for a while if that is related to a certain event. If the child, when stressed, does it, or it just become a habit for them to constantly do that, where is it stemming from? And I think an expert can help you break that down further. It may be related to learning style in the sense that kinesthetic learning may help, but it may also be a little more than that. And you would want to explore that option as well. Again, I hope I answered your question. How about using hand gestures when they explain their learning? What kind of learning does it fall? Nipa, that's a very nice question that you've asked here. And I think that also comes from the idea of, I'm sorry, I lost the question. Right. I think it means that the child may have a preference again for kinesthetic in the case, in a sense that, you know, they're sort of liking to explain with the hands because they're imagining what they're explaining. Again, if you have noticed, I may have like that idea as well, that habit. It may be a bit of kinesthetics. It may also be a little bit of visuals in the sense that when they see the hands moving, it becomes easier for them to concentrate on what is happening. There's some visual stimuli, right? So it doesn't specifically, I think, fall under a learning style. It's just a out of learning style preference that your child may have towards helping them learn. And I think that shouldn't be a problem, as gestures, in fact, again, could I ask you to please? Yes, thank you. In fact, I think gestures are good in the sense that they sometimes help attract the crowd as well. It keeps the crowd engaged. So I think that is a habit that shouldn't be a worry. My son is 2-year-old and 6 months, and he likes to explain things as well as he shows interest in books. So it will change as he grows. Yeah, I think, again, learning styles are never very rigid. They're very flexible and they grow. As your child learns something new, identifies a new style, discovers a new style, they may find an inclination towards that for a while. So you can, again, like I said, constantly remember to not just stick to one yourself. You see a preference, try to focus on that more, but also introduce a little bit of the others, because then it becomes a more wholesome learning process. We want it to be holistic. We want the child to be engaged in every way, right? Thank you all. Thank you for your very sweet feedback. Okay, we have another question. My son is. Mariam, when you talk about his fingers moving on things around and he's constantly playing while answering, I think it shouldn't really be a specific problem per se. Uh, I think again, it becomes a little of you observing if it is hindering the process of learning or helping it, right? It may be a way to keep their hands involved, do something so that their arms are distracted and they have that energy getting spent somewhere. But then again, with online classes and everything, the energy that the child had in general wasn't getting used up because they were staying back at home, and there was not that much of physical movement and everything. So that may be playing a role. I think you can take a little while to observe your child. Maybe get in touch with the teachers also to see if there has been a change in that learning process or something, and then see if you want to address it, or you can let it go and your child may himself reduce the habit. uh, I do not think left-handedness is the reason for slow writing. One of my very good friends is a left-handy, and I think she writes faster than any of us. So I don't think that should be a concern as far as I have my knowledge in this. Um, Nipa, I'm unsure. I'm sorry. I may have missed the habit that we're talking about, that you also had. And it may be something that is not acceptable towards the adult age or in the later stage. Again, if it is a concern like that for you, you can try to slowly direct your child towards something else, give a replacement habit, try to take something, introduce to the child a habit that is more acceptable, and see if they are willing to learn that habit, right? Sometimes it just takes a little time for them to break away from a habit. As they grow, they learn something else. So that may be playing a role as well. Um, okay, I'm not sure who iPhone here is, but I really do understand that concern. Again, the current education system has become such that by hearting things has become the bottom line because you have to pour it all out on a piece of paper. Um, and it's heartbreaking to see a child take stress on something like that when it's very evident that they are learning and enjoying something else. I think in that case, we as parents can give the right kind of support and ease that stress out for them. Bring it to their notice that it's important that they grasp and understand more than reproduce what is being written in a piece of paper. Just provide the right kind of support for them to let go of that stress a little. Your 2-year-old child trying to imitate the way the things that he's pronouncing, I mean, the things he's hearing, um, it may be an indicator of auditory style of learning. It may not also, because a 2-year-old, they're just entering the process of learning language, and imitating is one of the basic ways every child learns how to talk, how to speak because and expand their language vocabulary, because that's how the system works. So it may be an indicator, it may not be an indicator, it may just be a natural process of learning how to talk and expanding their vocabulary. uh, Nirpa, again, when it comes to gestures, I think we can focus on toning them down a little if that's needed, if they're too wild and too much. But then I don't think it should be something that you should discourage your child with if it aids their process of learning, right? I mean, if it needs to tone down, we can talk about that with the child, see if we can direct it somewhere else. But I don't think that should be a need to cut it off completely. How do we come to know that the child is ready to learn? Sana, do you mean in the sense of motivation that right now the child may be willing to learn or not? Um, I think it simply helps to ask if they're willing to for a quick study session or like a quick learning thing. And in general, when you give the different kinds of material to them, information to them in different learning styles, and you see they're attracted to something and holding on to something, I think that becomes an indicator that they're willing to learn. Because when given the right kind of information in the right way, the child may automatically become willing to learn a little. Mm. Nurulain, it's a specific concern. I hear you, and again, it's a tricky situation here. I think we can sort of try to incentivize his homework, maybe saying that if you finish this bit, we can go back to doing the color circle thing or matching things or whatever they like. A little bit of this, so we can do that. If you incentivize it, give them that as a motivation factor, it may help for them to get to that place where they are willing to do this, so they get a little bit of fun time in the learning that they like. If the child, Anisa, I mean, if the child has an auditory learning, I mean, if it's a learning style or a learning preference, it shouldn't be that you'll have to make them sit and read at all, because it's a preference because they like it. In that case, if it's more of hearing, we can sort of encourage the child to. This was something again I did back in my school days, where I would record my voice as I read the textbook paragraph one time, and then I would constantly go back to listening to it. So maybe you can try doing that, where you can ask the child to record or like say it out once, and then they can go back to hearing it again and again. If in the auditory aspect, it's hearing that they like more than reading out loud. Nurulain, I think in that sense, it may be a situation of, I mean, not related to learning styles per se, but about handling the demands and the tantrums of the child. And again, like, I think as you'll be familiar, that's a completely different domain. And I think that can be tackled from another thing that Kring has to offer, maybe through parenting without frustration or a course like that, where that aspect is also concentrated on. Anisa, I hear how sometimes that happens, once the child is through, I mean, once they feel like they've learned it once, they don't have to go back to it at all. I think again, in that sense, you can try to motivate them by giving information in the kind they like, structure it out a little, maybe say that if you don't want to do the same thing today, maybe we can do what you were taught yesterday's revision, and then follow it up that way. Figure a little schedule out with your child, see what works for them, what motivates them to read, or just go through the material in whichever learning style or preference that they have. If we are able to provide the right kind, it should be good motivation for the child to be able to do it. So Varna, again, I think a lot of times it isn't academics per se or the learning process per se that is a concern here. If your child is able to grasp things very fast, and learning is not a problem for him at all, I think it then becomes a problem of a concern of behavior of the child in general, rather than this particular field of academics or learning. So I think it may help for us to focus on that, target their behavior in general, see how we can discipline the child, bring a routine for the child, and then see if that helps and makes a difference for the child. How to help kids who has aversion to reading learn better? Imran, I think you can go back to any of the other options that we spoke about. Instead of reading, we can focus on writing, on diagrams, on visual images, videos, doing things, talking about examples, having an interaction. All of the other options are always open for you to try. So Varna, how to make him sit in a place? I think again, this is a question. I think I would like to invite Shruti again here to just go through how these concerns may be tackled a little better, because I think they may not essentially be related to learning in specific, but the tendency of the child to not be able to do so. Okay, if he's a visual learner, how to enhance the language learning ability? Mm, I think it helps to have, it's a very specific question, and I mean, if you could give me a little bit information on how old the child is, we can use presentation for the language, in the sense that you could have very big, bold letters, the language, the word that you're trying to explain to them, or the spelling and things like that. You can have placards and flashcards for the child that they can see and remember and grasp. So any way that you can make the language aspect a little more visual. 12 years, right? I think then placards can help, having presentation can help, diagrams can help, keywords help. You focus on the keyword, so the child is able to grasp that and then build around it. Like I said, visual ability is usually like a camera ability. They click the picture and it's in their mind. So maybe put information in a way that the picture that they click has everything very clearly written and explained in concise, because pictures will never be able to zoom in the mind. In big things with diagrams and everything, if you can explain, I think it should help the child. I have attempted my best to answer the questions today. Again, I think if there is any help in the other aspect of in some area that is not directly related to learning, I think Ring can really help all those areas in terms of hyperactivity, not the child not listening to you, the incentives not working, the child not sitting in a place. These are concerns not directly related to learning. So I think this may not be a concern per se, but it can be addressed in other settings with other things that Link has to offer. So again, Shruti's put the link again. You can always get in touch with the members here, with any of us, and we can direct you to that space as well. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Any last few questions? Anything before we wind up for today? Thank you all. Thank you. Again, as a reminder, the questionnaire, the assessment link has been sent. In case it is missed, I think we can share it again. If you have missed it, you can ask and we can have it again. The link for parenting without frustration has also been dropped in the chat box, so you can pick that up as well. Okay, we have one final question. How to introduce self-learning? I think, again, Fatima, this may take a little time. As the child grows older, they will take the, I think, effort by themselves to pick up on the process of learning by themselves. And again, once they have the kind of learning style established, something they know that attracts them and motivates them by themselves, and information presented in a way helps them learn faster, I think it becomes easier for them to approach that and pick it up themselves, adapt it in themselves. So I think that can definitely help. You can also encourage the child to do it by themselves. You can be a support, slowly extract yourself, maybe just become as a member of the learning process, switch roles, ask the child to teach you, try different things like that. And then I think slowly they can adapt to the idea of self-learning. Okay, yes, Shruti has dropped both the links again. Thank you so much for doing it so many times, Shruti. And yes, I think if you're okay, we can wind up today's session. Thank you all so much for joining in. And
Yeah,
it was
Yashi, it was a
lovely.
very wonderful session. It was an informative session. I think we can wind it up. Yeah.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you all so much for joining in. And I hope there was a little something for you all to take away from today. And I will see you next time with a little something new to offer. Have a good night, you all.